Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really interesting set of sources you've provided today, all centered on cultural heritage.
That's right. And specifically looking at Austria as a kind of case study.
Yeah, how a country decides, what bits of its past to highlight, what landscapes need protecting, and I suppose ultimately how it packages and sells its identity.
And the sources really draw out this this core tension, I think,
Yeah.
between two quite different types of heritage.
Okay.
Well, on one hand, you've got the stuff that's easy to, let's say, romanticize and sell, the imperial memory, the Habsburg ghosts.
Right, the spectacle.
Exactly. And then on the other side, there's the much messier ongoing business of maintaining, living landscapes, like the Alps, agriculture, things that are actively producing and changing.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then. To unpack how Austria jugbles that tension. We'll go from maybe its most famous export, Empress Elizabeth Sissi, right down to the nuts and bolts of farming policy and melting glaciers. Let's get into it.
So kicking off with Vienna, if you look at the tourism there, it feels overwhelmingly about the Habsburgs, doesn't it? Especially that 18th, 19th century period. And Sissi is just front and center.
Absolutely front and center. It's a masterclass in branding, really. And what the sources make clear is that the actual history, that often takes a backseat to the show.
Meaning the movie Sissi.
Precisely. The Sissi most people know isn't the historical Empress Elizabeth. It's the character from those Ernst Marischka films, the trilogy. That Sissi, the fictional one, has become the dominant icon. She's the lasting image.
And you could argue that fiction is now worth more, financially speaking, than the fact. The sources point out how potent that particular myth is. Sissi's even been rebranded for like the East Asian market as Chinese Princess Shiki.
Wow.
It's a global commodity.
Yeah.
And the power of that myth, it genuinely muddles things for people. There's this amazing anecdote in one source. Someone actually mixed up the death of Romy Schneider, the actress who played Sissi,
No way.
with the historical Empress Sissi's suicide. The line between the actress and the historical figure just completely dissolves. And the version that wins out, it's the profitable cinematic one.
So how is that narrative maintained so effectively? It can't just be chance. It feels curated.
Oh, it's absolutely curated and even legally reinforced to an extent. If you want to be an official tourist guide in Austria, a Fremdenführer, you have to go through this incredibly long training.
How long?
1.5 to 2 years. It's rigorous. And the law itself, the Fremdenführerverordnung, specifies the focus. Imperial history, Catholicism, and the Habsburgs. That's the core curriculum.
So the state is essentially defining the official story for tourists. And the guides, they become the brokers of that story. That's a lot of power.
Huge power. They're the gatekeepers, as you said.
Yeah.
And the sources highlight something really interesting about the exams they have to pass.
Which is?
They call it a gray zone. Imagine, after studying for nearly 2 years, there's no official list of approved questions the examiners have to stick to.
Really? So it's subjective?
It allows for significant subjectivity, yes. The examiners have considerable power to decide who they deem a worthy tourist guide. Your whole career could hinge on some obscure, unscripted question about imperial protocol or something.
That's quite something. It puts the guide in a tricky position.
And ultimately, what drives the narrative, they do choose to share. The sources are pretty blunt about this. It's the tourist gaze.
What the customer expects to hear.
Exactly. What the clients want, what they anticipate. Because at the end of the day, for the guide, it's a job. They need, and I'm quoting here, a monetarily successful career. So profit influences the history that gets told.
Okay, so we've seen how the intangible imperial memory gets managed, gets commodified. Let's switch gears now to something solid. Vienna's buildings. The actual physical structure.
Right, the built environment. The historic center of Vienna is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is a big deal.
And its value, its outstanding universal value, rests on 3 main historical layers, according to the sources.
Yeah, you've got the Middle Ages, the Baroque era, and then the Gründerzeit, that late 19th century period.
And we shouldn't forget the music, right? Even UNESCO acknowledges Vienna as the capital of European music since the 16th century. That's woven into the fabric of the city, too.
Absolutely. That intangible aura is everywhere. But focusing on the buildings, that Gründerzeit period was huge. Massive redevelopment in the 19th century.
That's when they built the Ringstrasse, isn't it? Tore down the old city walls.
Exactly. They created that famous circular boulevard and all the grand buildings along it. The sources emphasize its extraordinary value in terms of urban planning history. It was a monumental project.
But that era also set the stage for some pretty major architectural arguments, didn't it? The clash between old styles and new ideas.
Oh, definitely. Think about the turn of the century. You've got something like the Secession Exhibition House from 1898, very ornate, floral, drawing on historical style.
Very decorative.
Very. And then just a few years later, boom, Adolf Loos arrives.
With the Loosh House, right opposite the palace.
Precisely. 1911. That infamous naked facade. No ornament. It was deliberately provocative, a direct challenge to all that historicism. It was modernism basically shouting, we don't need your frills anymore.
And that tension between preserving the old and embracing the new, that must still be a major issue for Vienna today. It's not a static museum.
Far from it. It's a growing, living city. The population jump was huge, almost 200,000 more people between 1990 and 2010. That puts immense pressure on space.
Which inevitably leads to conflicts between, say, developers and preservationists.
Exactly. The sources talk about needing to manage controversial interpretations of World Heritage whenever new contemporary building projects come up. How do you build modern buildings in a historic city?
So how do they square that circle, allowing development without wrecking the heritage status that makes Vienna special?
Well, they had to create specific rules. The city developed what the sources call a concept for high-rise buildings. Basically, a specialized rulebook to figure out if a proposed tall building is compatible with the existing cityscape.
Ah, okay. A tool to try and manage that tension, to assess the visual impact.
Yeah, it's about ensuring new developments respect the historic skyline and don't just, barge in and ruin the view.
Right, we've done the imperial myths, the city buildings. Let's shift focus again, completely now, to the living landscapes. Agriculture, the Alps. Places where heritage isn't just about the past, it's about ongoing, active production.
Yes, and this brings in a really interesting concept, particularly from some of the Nordic sources discussed, the idea of protection through production.
Protection through production, meaning?
Meaning that the only way to genuinely preserve the character, the authenticity of these cultural landscapes like traditional farmland is to keep the activity going, keep farming it in the traditional way.
Because the landscape is the result of that activity.
Exactly. The sources even get into a bit of a semantic debate here.
Yeah.
These areas are often called semi-natural habitats.
Right.
But the argument is maybe semi-cultural habitats is more accurate because their existence, their look, their feel, it all depends entirely on continued human management. If the farming stops, the landscape changes completely.
Which makes the economics of farming absolutely critical. If it's not viable, the landscape heritage is threatened.
And that's the problem. The old agricultural support systems, like from the EU, were originally set up after World War II to deal with food shortages.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we often have the opposite problem, surpluses of mass-produced food. So those traditional support systems are under pressure, they're changing or shrinking.
So if the old subsidies are fading, where does the money come from to keep these traditional farms going? What's the new economic engine?
It seems to be the urban population's desires. There's this growing demand from city folks for niche things. Luxury food, experiences, travel, good stories with authenticity.
Ah, the authenticity buzzword again.
Right. People are apparently willing to pay almost anything for high-quality stuff that has a genuine story behind it. And that demand is actually pushing some farmers towards sustainable, specialized production. Their heritage becomes their unique selling point, their financial lifeline.
Okay, let's take that idea, landscape needing active stewardship, needing to be economically viable, and apply it to the Alps. The stakes there seem even higher.
They really are. The sources are stark. Construction space is incredibly limited up there, and the landscape, it states explicitly, is not a renewable resource. You can't just make more Alps.
And it's a uniquely vulnerable ecosystem, isn't it? Especially with climate change.
Hugely vulnerable. Climate change is causing massive instability. We're seeing this shift in the high mountains. The sources describe it as moving from a glacial system to a periglacial system.
Periglacial, what does that mean in practice?
It means the glaciers are melting much faster, obviously. But critically, as the ice disappears, the rock and debris it was holding together becomes unstable. The glue is gone.
So more risk of landslides, rock falls.
Exactly. Increased risk of debris flows. The landscape isn't just changing aesthetically, it's becoming physically less stable, more hazardous.
Yet people still feel this deep connection to the Alps, right? It's not just scenery.
No, absolutely not. The sources make a point of stressing the landscape's aesthetic qualities are vital for our psychological, spiritual, and physical well-being. They even talk about nature as a kind of co-therapist.
So it's fragile environmentally, but essential for human well-being. That puts a huge pressure on policy, I imagine.
It has to. Any new development, whether it's for hydropower, wind farms, more tourism infrastructure, it demands really careful planning. Intense cooperation on land planning is the phrase used.
And the warning seems to be.
The warning is basically, don't chase energy independence or autarky by just ruthlessly exploiting these incredibly valuable non-renewable landscapes. The cost could be far too high. So when you pull it all together, this deep dive shows this really fascinating constant tension running through how Austria manages its identity, its heritage.
Yeah, it seems to be everywhere.
Whether you're looking at the gilded history of Vienna or the high mountain pastures, it's caught between these two poles. On one side, this desire for a fixed, often romanticized past, Sissy's world, the grand buildings.
The easily marketable version.
Right. Versus the absolute, unavoidable necessity for active, ongoing management and stewardship in the here and now. That's the farmer, the city planner dealing with growth, the policymaker trying to protect the Alps. It's the present-day work.
Okay, so let's bring it back to you, the listener. We started off noting that the tourist guide's story, the history they tell, is shaped by needing a monetarily successful career. And we ended up seeing that the authenticity of a cultural landscape, like farmland or the Alps, depends entirely on continuing the actual production, the work. And that work increasingly needs to be marketed as authentic heritage to tourists to be financially viable.
Yeah, the economics drive both.
So the final thought to leave you with is this. If the profitability of both the imperial myth and the living landscape depends so heavily on storytelling and marketing, is there really a meaningful difference left between treasured cultural heritage and just a very well-managed cultural commodity? Something to think about next time you see an ad for a luxury Alpine cheese or maybe a fairy tale empress.